together and skating together.
Torval and Dean have marked the 40th anniversary of their Olympic gold by announcing they'll dance together for the final time in 2025. Hundreds of displaced Palestinians sheltering at a hospital in southern Gaza have been ordered to leave by Israeli troops surrounding the building. Hamas has warned that those at the Nasser hospital in the city of Khan Yunis face a potential massacre. The militant group has confirmed that it's taking part in talks in Cairo aimed at agreeing a ceasefire deal which would include the release of Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinians held in Israeli jails. The president of the Palestinian Authority in the occupied West Bank, Mahmoud Abbas, has urged Hamas to reach an agreement quickly. Our correspondent Nick Beak is following developments from Jerusalem and sent this report.
A speaker on an Israeli drone delivered the order to evacuate the main hospital in the city of Khan Yunis. The Israeli Defense Forces insisted they were telling only civilians to leave, not doctors and their patients. Fighting has closed in on Nasser Hospital, with many families trapped. Haytham Ahmed is a doctor there.
In the early hours of the morning, we woke up to loud sound of bombing and violent clashes. In the vicinity of Nasser Hospital, there were a large number of snipers deployed. Tanks, which were clearly visible, destroyed another gate and the UN school with the huge bulldozers.
Israel accuses Hamas of using medical centers as bases, something Hamas denies. Right in the south of Gaza, up to 1.5 million Palestinians are now crammed into Rafah on the border with Egypt. Israel has vowed to safely move out this swollen population so that it can launch a major attack on Hamas fighters in the city. Warning there was only around a day's worth of food left in Rafah, Martin Griffiths, the United Nations humanitarian chief, joined those calling on Israel to think again.
It will be impossible to run any effective humanitarian operations if there is that predicted assault on Rafah. And there are a few reasons for this. Breakdown of law and order, lack of proper access, bringing aid in, lack of anywhere safe to go within Gaza.
Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu maintains the IDF must move into Rafah to seal what he calls total victory against Hamas. The head of the military has promised another new offensive, this time against Hezbollah fighters operating in the south of Lebanon. The Iran-backed group fired on northern Israel this morning, prompting retaliatory airstrikes, which has become a near daily pattern since the October the 7th attacks. It all makes for a pessimistic picture as talks continue to try to bring about a ceasefire in Gaza. The US, Egypt and Qatar are hoping to negotiate an initial 6-week pause in the fighting to allow an exchange of hostages and prisoners as well as an influx of humanitarian aid into Gaza. The president of the Palestinian Authority, Mahmoud Abbas, has urged Hamas to reach a deal quickly to avoid, as he put it, another catastrophic event with dire consequences.
Labour has said it will block any prospective MPs who are not fit for the job as it responds to the row caused by comments its candidates have made about Israel's war against Hamas. The party has removed its backing from Azhar Ali, who remains on the ballot for the Rochdale by-election later this month, and has suspended Graham Jones, who was due to stand at the general election in nearby Hyndburn. Our political correspondent Harry Farley is following developments.
Labour campaign leaflets are still dropping through letterboxes in Rochdale today, promoting Azhar Ali. Until Monday night, he was the party's candidate in the by-election on February the 29th. His suspension came too late to cancel the deliveries, and he will still appear on the ballot paper because the deadline for naming a new candidate has passed. Mr. Ali was suspended for anti-Semitic remarks he apparently made at a meeting in October. The row has raised questions about Labour's selection process for prospective candidates. National Defence Secretary John Healey insisted due diligence was done.
There certainly are strong checks as part of selecting Labour candidates, but you can't see everything everywhere. What's important is that if new information comes to light, as in this case, we will act to investigate, we will act to block those who are not fit to serve as MPs.
Yesterday, a second Labour candidate, Graham Jones, was suspended for offensive comments he apparently made about Israel at the same meeting. The Jewish Labour movement's chair, Mike Katz, said it had not been Labour's finest hour. He suggested others who had been at the meeting and did not speak out should be suspended.
Hi, it's Amazon. Just call at the door there because somebody's in the house. It'll go down to here. Yeah? Just call at the door. No, nobody's coming on? Because somebody's there. Yeah, I'm gonna call them and let them know that you are out right now. Yeah? Okay? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Average speed camera zone. Speed limit is 50 miles per hour.
Cristin, vezi că a venit pachetul jos și omul ăsta bate la 109 de neve. Cred că nici Nicoleta n-a auzit, nici mai mare și poate pe acasă și ea. Dacă poți cu botul. Da? Ok, mulțumesc, dar... Mulțumesc, la revedere.
Average speed camera zone. Speed limit is 50 miles per hour. Average speed camera zone. Speed limit is 50 miles per hour.
More colleagues standing back from wanting to continue in politics, but the damage done to British politics as a whole in the long term, as good people say no thank you to not wanting to step forward into public life.
Writing on the social media site X, the Prime Minister said that MPs have increasingly been targeted by aggressive mobs. We will never let those who intimidate prevail, he wrote. MPs have been given updated security advice after recent protests relating to the situation in the Middle East. The Palestine Solidarity Movement, which organised the protest, argued it was legitimate and legal for them to demonstrate outside the MP's home after he had ignored their concerns.
The Ukrainian military says it's destroyed a Russian warship in a drone attack while it was sailing off the coast of occupied Crimea. It says the vessel was a large landing craft, which is seen as crucial to the Russian Navy. But elsewhere, Kyiv is struggling on parts of the front line. Our Ukraine correspondent James Waterhouse reports from Kiev.
For Ukraine, it was a welcome sight on the calm waters of the Black Sea. Footage released by its military once again showing the moment of impact as one of several naval drones, packed with explosives, collided with a Russian landing ship. Footage online appeared to show a column of smoke rising off the coast of occupied Crimea. Moving soldiers and equipment by water is the most efficient way for Moscow to supply forces in southern Ukraine. As Serhiy Kuzan, a Ukrainian military analyst, explains, attacks like this have forced Russia's Black Sea fleet to move further east.
Regular strikes by Ukrainian forces are disrupting the logistics and decreasing the capacities of the Russians in Crimea. After the damage inflicted today, the ship is impossible to repair. There are 9 large landing ships remaining. Gradually, the Russian fleet is shrinking significantly.
These types of strikes are also part of Kiev's long game by trying to cut Russian supply lines to isolate invading troops in Crimea. It's been an effective strategy on water, but has done little to change Ukrainian fortunes on the front lines. Ukraine's new commander-in-chief, Alexander Syrsky, has visited the cities of Avdiivka in the east and Kupiansk in the northeast, and called the situation extremely complex and stressful.
The Foreign Secretary, Lord Cameron, has urged the US Congress to back a new package of military support for Ukraine. In an editorial for an American political magazine, he's warned against the folly of giving in to tyrants, saying Western allies should not show the weakness displayed against Hitler in the 1930s. The rate of inflation remained at 4% last month. The Office for National Statistics says a rise in gas and electricity bills was offset by falling prices for food, in particular bread and cereals. It's the first time since September 2021 that the cost of food has dropped. Our chief economics correspondent Darshini David has been looking at the figures.
There was a rise in the domestic energy price cap in January, but not in overall inflation. Elsewhere, retailers were offering particularly large discounts on clothes and furniture, following disappointing sales in the run-up to Christmas, as higher interest rates took their toll on spending. Food prices too, for items such as crisps and cakes, went down between December and January, helped by cheaper ingredients. But many shoppers, such as these in Warrington, are struggling as prices overall remain higher than they were.
Bills, food, everything's getting more expensive.
I think for us, we actually moved back from London because it was so expensive.
Some things are coming down, but on a general basis, it's not really coming down enough.
The Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, acknowledged that inflation remained higher than was comfortable.
Inflation never falls in a straight line, and although it's welcome that it hasn't gone up today, it is still double the target level of 2%, and we're not going to be able to relieve pressure on families until we hit that target.
And there are some areas that still concern the Bank of England's interest rate setters, such as inflation in services, which includes hotel stays or restaurant meals, and the rate at which wages are rising. If they cut the cost of borrowing too soon, they fear that inflation could resurge. So, while the bank's governor today expressed relief at the stalling of overall inflation, analysts think it may be the summer before rates start to fall.
The High Court has said it will not rule on whether or not universities owe their students a duty of care. The case came to court after Natasha Abrahart, who was studying physics at the University of Bristol, took her own life in 2018 because of mental health struggles. The judge did uphold a ruling that the university discriminated against her. Our education correspondent Hazel Shearing reports.
Natasha Abrahart had social anxiety and had been due to give a presentation in a large lecture hall on the day that she died. She was 20 years old. A judge has upheld a 2022 ruling that the University of Bristol failed to make reasonable adjustments for her. But Miss Abrahart's parents and other bereaved families wanted the judge to rule that the university owed her a duty of care. The High Court in recent weeks has been considering whether reasonable steps must be taken to avoid students coming to harm, and whether universities have a duty not to cause such harm. The idea of a duty of care calls into question the role of a university and where its responsibilities lie. The University of Bristol says it is offering to set up a meeting with the Abrahart family and that its students' mental health is a priority. But Miss Abrahart's mother, Margaret, believes following best practice is not enough.
It is heartbreaking that our exceptional daughter was failed so badly and suffered such unnecessary torment. Natasha only ever had one standard, to do her best. Now is the time for the university managers to match that standard by delivering what is both necessary and expected.
The judge said it was not necessary for him to express any view on a duty of care one way or the other. Now the Abraharts say they will take their fight back to Parliament.
You're listening to the 6 o'clock news on BBC Radio 4. The main news so far: Hamas says it fears a massacre at a hospital in Gaza after Israel ordered people to leave the area. Labour has sought to draw a line under a row caused by comments its candidates have made, saying it will block those not fit to be MPs. Still to come.
If we didn't do it then, I think there'd be a lot of casualties down the lane.
The volunteers in Bath helping toads to cross the road. More than 100 families in England and Wales who care for severely disabled adults and children outside hospital have told the BBC that the NHS is failing to provide enough vital support. Many say they're desperate, describing continuing battles to get help and huge variation in what is available, depending on where people live. NHS England says funding decisions follow government guidelines and are based on individual needs. Here's our social affairs editor, Alison Holt.
Most of the families contacted us after the BBC told the story of a single mother who on one occasion had to stay awake for 60 hours caring for her severely disabled son. His home care repeatedly broke down. It was funded through NHS Continuing Healthcare, which supports people with complex needs to live outside hospitals. There's a similar scheme for children. Many of the families told us the system was adversarial. Some said their help was reduced without reasons being given. Others that support varied hugely depending on the area. The clearest themes were of exhaustion and desperation. Louise and Brad requested 2 nights NHS help a week with their 15-year-old disabled son, Jack. He's in considerable pain, needs constant monitoring, and it takes both of them to turn him every 3 hours. The request was rejected.
I just feel tired all the time, exasperated, feel like you're banging your head against the wall.
It's taken a huge toll medically on both of us. We're both in our 60s. We've got additional health complications because we don't get enough sleep. As families, we're just left in the middle with a lot of empathy from professionals. Empathy doesn't buy us sleep.
Their council has since agreed to pay for the overnight care, and their local NHS says it's sorry if the process has caused them additional distress. NHS England says decisions are based on individual circumstances and follow government guidelines. And the government says eligibility for help will vary because different areas have different health needs.
NATO's Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg says a record 18 countries are expected to meet their defence spending target this year. All 31 members must spend a minimum of 2% of GDP on defence annually, but many, including Germany, have failed to do this. From NATO headquarters in Brussels is our defence correspondent, Jonathan Beale.
It's taken a decade for most NATO countries to spend 2% of their national income on defence. In 2014, when the target was first set, only 3 members, the US, the UK and Greece, met it. But Jens Stoltenberg says by the end of this year, that figure will be 18 nations out of a total of 31. He called that real progress, but added some allies still had a long way to go. Defence spending in Europe has long been a bone of contention in the US. When Donald Trump was president, he bullied and cajoled allies and even threatened to quit the alliance. He's been repeating similar threats out on the campaign trail. In Europe, there may well be nervousness about a potential second Trump term, but it's the language, not the person, that Mr. Stoltenberg chose to criticise.
We should not undermine the credibility of NATO's deterrence, and that's both about the capabilities we are investing in, but also how we communicate, because deterrence is in the mind of our adversaries, and we should leave no room for miscalculation or misunderstanding in Moscow.
In reality, it is the threat from President Putin which has motivated many NATO nations to increase their defence spending, not Mr. Trump. There's been a six-fold increase in defence spending across the alliance since 2014, when Russia first annexed Crimea. And Germany, which was often a target of Mr. Trump's irritation in the past, says it will soon have the largest defence budget in Europe, overtaking Britain.
One of the most senior law enforcement officials in the US government has warned that artificial intelligence could be used to sow chaos and incite violence in elections. The Deputy Attorney General, Lisa Monaco, also said tougher sentences were planned for those who used AI to commit crimes. She's been speaking to our security correspondent, Gordon Carrera.
Last month, some voters in America's New Hampshire primary received a phone call from what sounded like President Biden, telling them not to go to the polls. It was a so-called deep fake created with artificial intelligence. On a visit to London, the US Deputy Attorney General, Lisa Monaco, told me the fear was that this was only the first sign of what was to come, with AI supercharging false information.
It can cause people to distrust the sources of information that they're getting, to dissuade them or confuse them in terms of exercising their right to vote, to incite violence. That's something we're worried about, and to just generally sow distrust and potentially chaos.
Lisa Monaco describes AI as a double-edged sword because it's also being used by the FBI and prosecutors to help them investigate crimes. For instance, scouring through tips provided by the public or CCTV footage of events such as the riot at the US Capitol following the last presidential election. She also said that the use of AI in crimes such as fraud would be treated as an aggravating factor, much like the use of a gun in a robbery, and this would mean tougher sentences for those convicted.
The US House of Representatives has narrowly voted to impeach a member of cabinet for the first time in nearly 150 years. Republicans say the Homeland Security Secretary, Alejandro Mayorkas, has failed to manage a major influx of illegal migrants. The impeachment vote will now head to the Democrat-controlled Senate, where it's highly likely to fail. A sample of results from the presidential election in Indonesia suggests the Defence Minister, Prabowo Subianto, has won with nearly 60% of the vote. Official results are not expected until next month. Mr. Prabowo is a former commander of special forces and has been accused of ordering the abduction of democracy activists in the 1990s under the dictatorship of his father-in-law, Suharto. Our Southeast Asia correspondent Jonathan Head reports from Jakarta.
On this, his third attempt to win the presidency, Prabowo Subianto ran a clever, upbeat social media campaign which completely refashioned his image, from tough-talking soldier to that of an avuncular, slightly comical elder statesman. It proved very effective, in particular with younger Indonesians who have little knowledge of Mr. Prabowo's controversial past. As a member and later commander of Indonesia's elite special forces, he was accused of serious human rights abuses during the occupation of East Timor and of ordering the abduction and torture of student activists in the last days of the Suharto regime in the 1990s. This time Mr. Prabowo was helped by the support of incumbent President Joko Widodo, the man who defeated him in the previous two elections. The president remains very popular, but has been accused of weakening Indonesia's democratic institutions and of abusing his power in his alliance with Mr. Prabowo. For many Indonesians, his all but certain victory now sets a new and troubling direction for their young democracy.
The former French President Nicolas Sarkozy has lost his appeal against a conviction for illegal financing during his 2012 re-election campaign. He was given a one-year jail sentence, with half of it suspended. But he won't go to prison immediately. His lawyer said there would be an appeal, and it's likely any sentence will be served as house arrest. Train drivers with Northern and LNER are to stage a one-day strike on the 1st of March. They'll also ban overtime for 3 days from the 29th of February. Their union, ASLEF, said the action was in response to the companies breaking agreements. Train drivers at 5 other companies, Chiltern, C2C, East Midlands, Northern and TransPennine Railways, have voted to continue industrial action for 6 months as part of their disputes about pay and conditions. No new strike dates have been announced. In the city, the 100 share index ended the day up 56 points at 7,568. On Wall Street a short time ago, the Dow Jones was up 23 points at 38,295. On the currency markets, the pound is trading at $1.25.6 against the euro. Sterling is at €1.17.1. That makes a euro worth 85.4 pence. A road in Bath has been closed for 6 weeks to let toads, frogs and newts travel to their breeding grounds. Volunteers have been patrolling Chalcombe Lane to find the amphibians and help them across. Our West of England correspondent Dan Johnson spent an evening with the group.
Down a dark country lane on a wet night in Bath, the hunt is on.
Because it's good conditions, isn't it?
Yeah, it should be fine.
Volunteers in high vis are sweeping the road with torches and buckets, looking for amphibians crossing.
How do you spot them, guys?
With difficulty.
You've really got to get your eye in and sort the leaves from the frogs and the toads.
Looks like a frog.
Where?
It's like there.
Oh, he's a slippery one. Iris and Isadora are the youngest out tonight on toad patrol, helping them safely reach the pond where they breed and lay their eggs.
We're looking for frogs, toads, newts. They're kind of migrating to where they were born to mate. Because of this road here, they get run over.
Sadly, not everyone makes it.
If we didn't do it, then I think there'd be a lot of casualties down the lane.
There are 200 groups like this across the country. Sheila Gundry is from the charity Frog Life.
You feel like you've actually made a difference, that I'm very aware of the ecological catastrophe and all the problems, and you think, oh, where can I start? And it just makes you think, no, actually, I have actually made a difference. I have actually saved a life, so
there is some hope.
There is some hope, yes, it cheers me up.
I was going to put them out just up the lane a little bit.
Not every toad road crossing point can be closed for 6 weeks, but here they reckon they'll save more than 2,000 amphibian lives.
The British ice skating champions Jane Torvill and Christopher Dean have returned to Sarajevo in Bosnia, the scene of their Winter Olympics victory 40 years ago. They used the visits to reveal they'll no longer skate together after a farewell tour next year. Our correspondent Ollie Foster has been looking back at the groundbreaking routine performed to Ravel's Bolero, which won them gold and made them famous.
In a sport that seeks perfection, Torvill and Dean's spellbinding routine remains the benchmark. Gliding and twisting across the Olympic ice to the rising rhythms of Ravel's Bolero, this was a revolution as they broke through the traditional boundaries of ice dance.
We were almost in a trance. We practiced all year round, every day, to do this performance.
All we hoped was we skated it the best we could. And that was that moment at the end where there was a pause before the audience applauded. But as they applauded, they obviously appreciated the routine. We realised then that we had skated it the best we could.
Across the board! That's it! What a marvellous, marvellous set of marks. 11 sixes. What could be more convincing?
40 years on from that Valentine's night when 24 million watched them win gold on the BBC, Torvill and Dean, now 66 and 65, have returned to Sarajevo on the anniversary of their performance that defined those Winter Games and changed their lives. They've also revealed that they'll be returning to the ice next year for a farewell tour.
And I think it's the right time for us to want to do our last celebration tour around the country.
We just hope that people will come along and celebrate with us, because the tour is a celebration of our careers.
And it's the last time.
And the last dance.
The headlines again. Israel has ordered Palestinians to leave the grounds of a hospital in southern Gaza, prompting Hamas to say it fears a massacre. Israel says it's providing a secure route to safety. Labour has said it will act to block people not fit to be MPs after suspending 2 parliamentary candidates over remarks about Israel. The former Conservative Minister Tobias Ellwood has said he won't be intimidated after a protest calling for a ceasefire in Gaza was held outside his home. The annual rate of inflation remained at 4% last month. BBC News.
With Tom Sanders. And with noting that Torval and Dean were Kirsty Young's guests on Desert Island Discs in 2014, you can still find that edition on BBC Sounds. Sally Phillips stars in our Comedy Next this evening here on Radio 4 as Claire Barker, a control freak who likes nothing better than interfering in people's lives. First though, are we as a society in danger of losing control? In a new series on Radio 4, we'll be seeking answers on artificial intelligence.
I'm Alex Grotowski.
And I'm Kevin Fong.
My biggest fear about AI is that people are going to take it way too seriously.
No, I have legitimate fears about AI, and have you not seen Terminator? Each episode is sort of exploration.
We know that people out there have genuine concerns, genuine questions about AI. And we're going to try and find the best person to answer that question.
At the end of the episode, we'll all be better informed and better equipped to deal with everything that the future holds for us.
The Artificial Human on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds. Starts next Monday afternoon at 4:30.
Now on Radio 4, first broadcast in 2019, the final episode of Claire in the Community, starring Sally Phillips.
Claire in the Community by Harry Venning and David Ramsden. Killing Claire.
Hello, Claire, I'm home.
So, how was it?
It was so sad, Claire. My times performing with the Pepperpot Players Amateur Dramatic Company were some of the happiest since coming to England. They are such a lovely bunch of thespians.
And what's that you got there?
It is a farewell present they gave me.
Oh, well, don't keep us in suspense. You gonna open it?
Oh!
What is it?
A ham! Why would my fellow actors give me a ham?
Who knows? Actors are a funny lot.
Don't I know it? At the Pepperpot Players, nobody is allowed to mention Macbeth.
Inside the theatre, yeah.
Anywhere, because we put such a terrible production that nobody is allowed to mention it.
I didn't know you were in Macbeth.
Third which? Everybody agreed my Scottish accent was unbelievable.
I didn't see it, I'm afraid.
When I go home, I might join the amateur dramatic group in my village. Apparently, they are doing a production of Wolf Hall.
About Thomas More.
It's a different Wolf Hall. It's about a man who holds wolves. Wolf Hall is his big business in my country. But it will not be as much fun as the Pepperpot Players. I shall miss them.
Yeah, I expect there'll be quite a few people that you'll miss, eh, Nolly?
Oh, yes, quite a few.
Such as?
I will miss Thomas.
Yes, Thomas, of course, yes.
Brian, I will miss Brian.
And Brian will miss you.
And Simon, of course.
Simon?
Yes, Simon, I will miss him.
You hardly ever see Simon.
You see him enough to miss him?
If you say so. Anyone else?
The man in the mini-mart.
The man in the mini-mart?
He used to give me all the out-of-date bags of crisps.
Okay, you're going to miss him because of that?
I will, I like crisps.
And is that it?
That's it.
There's no other names that spring to mind?
Not immediately.
None at all after 8 years?
No, sorry. Claire, I'm teasing you. Yes. Of course there is another name spring to mind.
I should jolly well hope so.
The Daily Mail. I shall miss my Daily Mail. It has been like a friend to me. But luckily, I will still be able to read online, where it is even more packed with truth and honesty than in the print version.
Daily Mail, seriously?
I'm teasing you again, Claire. I will never forget you.
You will miss me.
I will never forget you.
It's the same thing.
No, it isn't. But I do have a going-away surprise. Just for you.
Oh, really? Well, hope I like it.
Nolly! Nolly!
Thomas, I thought you were going to bed.
I can't sleep. Can I have one of your special bedtime stories?
Oh, I'm very busy packing, Thomas. Go back to bed. I'll try to sleep.
I'll try, Nolly, but I can't promise.
Good night, Thomas. I love you.
I love you too.
Good night, Thomas. I love you.
Yeah.
I shall miss him. So sad he has no playmates to grow up with.
Yeah, well, you know, Brian and I often talked about giving Thomas a little brother, stroke sister, stroke gender non-specific sibling, but
It would have involved sex.
But basically, yeah, I mean, you know, we inquired about IVF, but thanks to a typing error, we ended up joining an Ulster paramilitary.
Strange.
What is?
I packed something in my bag and now it's gone.
What is it?
Something.
Something important?
Something very important. In fact, I cannot live without it.
Okay, well, just tell me what it is and I'll help you look.
Leave my bag alone. I mean, don't you worry about it. In fact, soon you won't have anything to worry about.
I'm not sure I follow.
You will. You will. But for now, I must go to the shops.
Okay, to replace the thing that you've lost.
If only it was that easy, but this is not America. No, I'm going to the hardware store because I have a little more tidying up to do before I leave. I see you soon, Claire.
See you soon, Nolly. What on earth is she on about? I have a surprise for you. I have lost something important. I must replace it. You will follow very soon.
Mummy?
Goodbye, Thomas.
Did I just catch you mimicking Nolly's accent in a way that could be construed as racist?
No, of course not. I think you must have awoken from a dream and imagined it.
Like the time I awoke from a dream and thought I caught you and Simon kissing?
That's exactly it, yes.
Where is Nolly?
She just popped out.
I wanted to show her this picture I drew.
Well, I'll show it to Nolly, Thomas, okay?
You promise?
I promise, off to bed. Go to sleep. Oh, if you've forgotten your keys again, Brian, I am not going to be happy. Yes?
Are we speaking to the homeowner?
Yes, you are. But I am a reluctant homeowner who never really wanted to get onto the property around here. I take no pleasure in the £200,000 we've made in the last 10 years. And, yeah, sorry, you are?
We are.
No, wait, no, let me guess. You're wearing dark suits, white shirts, black ties. You're